Hi, neighbor. This morning I'm with Boone County Sheriff Dwayne Carey. Sheriff, thanks so much for giving me a little bit of your time today.
Appreciate you having me. Thanks, Jody.
Sheriff, I'm really curious, maybe a lot of folks are, about law enforcement during COVID time. Obviously, you still got the jail to operate. You still got, your deputies to manage and a large, sizable operation to run. Um,
Right.
so tell me how this has affected the shutdown and the pandemic, how it's affected law enforcement and your department especially.
So for our department, Jody, it really hasn't changed anything at all for us. I mean, we've stayed normal operation from the beginning, and we're still normal operation right now. So the patrol deputies are still out doing what they do, responding to calls. We're still being proactive, still doing traffic stops, maybe not to the extent of, true normal, but I mean, we're still making DWI arrests. We're still doing a variety of different things. Probably the only change that we've made is if we can release on a summons, then we'll release on a summons versus taking to jail. Now, obviously, some offenses don't allow for you to do that. And so we're still processing, booking them into the jail like we always have. So really not a whole lot of change. The only changes that we have made have been adjustments to what other people needed us to do. So for example, Jody, the court, 13th Judicial, they've put out a couple of orders to where they stop, issuing garnishments and summons and that type of thing. So then we moved our civil process deputies that are responsible for doing that 24/7, and obviously not 24/7, but that do that full time. They then just started serving ex partes because the court didn't want us serving that type of stuff. As far as the jail goes, really no change in the jail, other than in mid-January, we were housing out about 111 out of county. We actually had detainees in 14 different county jails outside of ours. So Judge Crane and his group have done a really good job to reduce that number down. And when the pandemic hit, we really wanted to free up more space, because what we were looking at, Jody, is if we got it in the jail, we had to have a place to be able to isolate and quarantine. So the judges did a really good job. We worked with them. We got the number down. This morning, it was at 172. Nobody out of county. So we just have 172 detainees in-house. We have 2 tanks that are totally empty, disinfected. So if it got into the jail, we are able, with medical staff, we're able to then quarantine and keep them separate from general population. We've worked with Scott Clardy at the health department. He has told me personally that he applauds the effort that we put into making sure that we're keeping it out of the jail. So we're about 7 weeks in now, and we have not had an active case. So the staff back there just doing an incredible job. We're doing all the CDC preventive measures. We disinfect 24/7. Everybody that enters the jail has their temperature taken. If they're going into general population, they get the soap and water, delousing shower, all new clothing. And so we've just been fortunate, but fortunate because we've done all the right stuff. And so intakes in the jail have dropped probably to around 7 or 8 on average a day. A normal day, it would be probably around 20. So releasing on summons, it has slowed down. And talking with my enforcement commander, Greg Vandegrift, he was telling me that for the first couple of weeks, domestic violence cases actually were down a little bit. But over the last 3 or 4 weeks, we're starting to see those go back up. So the guys and gals have been super busy on the road. Calls have stayed steady. We've just handled arrests differently if we could. If it was an arrest that the individual wasn't going to be a public safety threat, then we could release on summons. So pretty much normal operation.
Okay, and then when you are interacting with the public or even with each other, and as far as personal protective equipment, the PPE goes, how are you handling that? How well equipped are you there?
So we have plenty in stock. We actually are a department that hasn't been using PPE unless it's needed. So what I try to explain to people is this: every day a deputy on the road is dealing with infectious disease, HIV, TB, the list goes on, right? So we are constantly aware of that. This is really no different. From the media perspective, it is, right? But from our perspective, it's still what we do every day. So we kind of do that social distancing just within our officer safety. Obviously, if we're interviewing somebody, we're keeping a certain distance, gun sight away. So we do a lot of that already. Then we have continuity of operations orders that are in place. So if I came into contact with you, Jody, and you were showing symptoms, I would then don a mask and then have you don a mask, and then we would complete the contact if it wasn't an arrest situation, if it was an interview or whatever. So we're utilizing that when someone's symptomatic or when we have a gut feeling or a feeling that we need to use that PPE. So we've gone through, the last time I checked, maybe 6, 7, 8 masks. So again, just the way that we normally do our operation and what we have to do to protect ourselves every day, this is really no different for us.
Okay. And you mentioned that initially domestic calls maybe were down and now they've gone up. I know that the Sheriff's Department offers a variety of resources to victims of child abuse, victims of domestic violence. How have those contacts been any different?
So they really haven't changed a whole lot. So our detective unit, if it's a child abuse case, we're still going to the Rainbow House to do interviews, or if we're doing them at the Sheriff's Department, again, you do your social distancing, you put all of that in play. The same thing with domestic violence. If it's a situation of where the victim needs to go to the shelter, we're still instructing, we're still going through all of our normal steps. So none of that has really changed for us. And I won't say cliche, but I mean, it's what we do. I mean, the community expects us to be there for them in these types of situations. And so that's why I just elected not to change anything. We put the orders in place so we can protect our people. And we've just still been doing what we normally do because that's what I think people expect us to do.
And I appreciate that, Sheriff. And on behalf of myself and the community, thank you for that constant presence. The question is, how has it changed anything? And I love the responsible word, why should it? Because this is what you do. And you come into contact with, you mentioned HIV and tuberculosis, and I think of, hepatitis and others that are highly contagious, that it doesn't take much maybe to contract those. What has been the impact of the stay-at-home order and maybe people calling and saying, oh, there's too many people gathered somewhere? Have you gotten very many of those?
We really haven't, Jody. And if we have received a call, we've sent them to the health department. But the stance that we were going to take from the beginning, and I talked about it on a couple of different radio shows, was that, we were going to try to educate, try to warn, but we weren't going to arrest for stuff like that. So really, to be honest with you, we're treating it a lot like a loud music complaint or a barking dog complaint, where we would just go and say, hey, knock it off or, separate, whatever. And this is the reason why you need to do it. There's stay-at-home order, da, da, da. But we really even haven't had those calls in the county. Now, I think the city of Columbia has had a lot more of that, but at the county level, we just haven't experienced that. In fact, we haven't issued one summons for anything to do with the stay-at-home order or social distancing, large groups or anything.
Well, several weeks ago, I think this was probably late April, maybe, my wife and I felt kind of like, a little rebellious, because we were supposed to be staying at home. But I got to confess, we were completely out of Diet Coke. And we didn't want to go into the store. And we had just had some groceries delivered. We didn't want to make a delivery request just for Diet Coke, right? So I said, hey, outdoor vending machine. Now, I'm probably thinking back to, I graduated from high school in 81 and grew up in Bell, little town where every store had an outside vending machine, I think. And so we drove to Hallsville, we drove to Centralia, we came back, and 54 miles after we had left home and came back, we found one a mile and a half from our home at Mosier's on the business loop. And I thought, well, we were supposed to, it wasn't, but I said that is essential travel because, my wife and I get along famously, but I need that caffeine. And of
Right.
course,
I hear you.
I say that in jest, but I did notice, I'm on the nextdoor.com site, the neighborhoods site online where people talk about, hey, there's somebody knocking on doors around here. We don't know who they are. Or, kids were stealing bicycles, those sorts of things. People keep
Right.
each other aware of stuff. And I've also followed and seen some of those. Somebody said, hey, the cops got called, and this would have been city, Valley View subdivision. They said, somebody called the cops on us because we were having a barbecue on our back deck, just their family,
Right.
4 or 5 people. And, they were mad, and, the police showed up and said, hey, what's going on? We've had a complaint. And what I wonder is, especially in those situations, our senses have been heightened because there is less traffic, there's less ambient noise. And I just wonder if maybe that sort of gathering wouldn't have even raised an eyebrow at 3 months ago, but suddenly, it sounds like there's a whole group of people over there and we better call the cops. Part of me was sort of amused, and then part of like, well, I wonder if that's just a product of this stay at home, this pandemic time.
Oh yeah, I think so. I mean, I would agree with you 100% that, if we were going to speculate, that's what it is that the senses are heightened. And then some people think, hey, if I can't do that, why can they do that? And so you get a little bit of that as well. I think the health department, has had a few calls on, your big box stores to where, again, when we were at stay at home, a lot of people were doing some landscaping, they were buying mulch, doing all of that stuff. So the small business owners saying, hey, I can't even be open, but there's all kinds of people in the garden section, at Lowe's or wherever. And so I think some of it is, if I can't do it, you're not going to be able to do it. And I'm sure the city did the same thing that we would do is, hey, we got a call. People need to understand that when we get the call, we have to respond. And then, you just have a nice conversation. Oh, hey, everybody's from the same family, enjoy the afternoon, and you move on to the next call. So
you said you take the temperature of folks who are coming in to visit at the jail or coming in there. Speaking kind of metaphorically, this is the temperature of the community as far as people go, their moods, their emotions. What are you detecting? What are your deputies telling you? This has been a pretty long ordeal, and I wonder if people were a little more civil early on, and now they're just itching to get out. And you can't tell me what to do. Give me an idea of what you're seeing as far as how people are interacting either with you and your officers or just with each other.
We haven't had an issue at all. And again, I go back, kind of our mantra at the Sheriff's Department is we treat everyone like you would like your mother to be treated. And so we just haven't, and we normally don't. I mean, we just don't have those issues. So if we're interacting, if it's a bad guy that needs to go to jail, usually those don't go as pleasant, as you and I are talking right now. But for the most part, everybody is, treating us with respect because we're treating them with respect. And we just haven't had any of those issues at all. And so I do think as the weather has gotten nicer, we're into this different phase out of the stay-at-home order. I can just see there's more traffic. There's more people out and about. And so I think, gradually that's going to pick up. But again, from our perspective, if we're doing what we need to be doing as far as professionalism goes and how we treat people, everybody has responded great to our folks.
Okay, that's great to know, and it has a lot to do with the tone that you've set as sheriff,
right,
and as your department. And one thing I really try to avoid with high neighbor is politics, but necessarily so. the sheriff is an elected position, and you have filed for reelection and are currently campaigning to be sheriff again for another 4 years. Can I kind of give you the microphone here, and you say, I'm Dwayne Carey, and this is why I should continue to be your sheriff?
Well, to be honest with you, Jody, I don't like to do that when I'm working, but I can say I'm on my lunch hour. So it's
Okay.
about 11:20. And so, and I've been so darn busy the last 7 weeks, I really haven't done a whole lot of anything. I mean, this will be my 5th term if I'm reelected. We've done a lot of great stuff over the last 15, almost and a half years. So, obviously elected in '04, haven't been opposed until this year. And so, the thing that we've done, and there's so many highlights. I mean, we started the Internet Crimes Task Force, to really focus on some of the internet crimes involving child enticement and child porn. That's been a great thing that we started back in '07. We put full-time SROs into 4 of our county schools to make sure they had everything that they needed. We started our own K-9 program. So instead of spending money, we're actually making money by training handlers from other departments. And that also helps them because it makes it more affordable for the smaller municipalities or the smaller counties. And then they're doing all the training here in Boone County. So that's been another great program. But the 2 biggies for us, we became the first jail in the state of Missouri and the 8th Circuit to receive national accreditation for the way we operate our jail. And that's the policies and procedures. And that was back in August of 2019, last year. So the first jail, and everybody needs to kind of really let that sink in, the first jail in the state of Missouri and the first jail in the 8th Circuit. So you're getting the Dakotas in there and Iowa, several states, and we're the first ones to receive the national accreditation. So that is a big feather in our cap. What that says is our best practices, our policy, our procedures are all within national standards, and we operate within all case law. So that was on the jail side. On the enforcement side, for the last 4 years, we've been going through a national accreditation process, and we're going to receive that award actually on August 1st of this year, and we'll be the 2nd sheriff's department in the state of Missouri to receive that national accreditation, again, for gold standard policy and procedures and showing proof that you operate within those policies and procedures. So the Highway Patrol, University of Missouri Police Department, they're the only other 2 in our area that have received that national accreditation. So another huge feather in our cap. So those 2 on both sides of what we call the magic door, the jail and the operations side, we're doing some just fabulous stuff. And to receive those 2 national accreditations should tell people what we've got going on is a pretty good thing. And so that's why I use the Carry on the Progress, because over the last 15 and a half years, we've done just dynamite work.
Well, and looking at, you mentioned a while ago, the 111 detainees that were housed out of county, and now it's 0 because of some work that the court has done with you. But I know that jail overcrowding, that the out of county detention has been an issue for quite a while. I know back when I covered county government, it was always a topic of discussion among you and the commissioners. That problem probably hasn't gone away while the temporary fix during the pandemic is in place. So the next sheriff, you or whoever else is that's going to be a pretty big challenge to continue to face.
Oh yeah, because the problem is the only solution to it is to build a bigger jail, right?
Jail.
So so we don't want to do that. And there are some citizen groups that just kind of don't understand how that works. And the thing about it is, when I started my career, I worked in the jail, and so I've been managing it for a long time. And if you've never experienced either working in or managing a jail, you really have no idea. I'll just be honest with you. You ask any sheriff in the state of Missouri or probably in the country, and they'll tell you what's the one thing that is like your biggest headache, and they will say managing the jail. So, because just for instance, Jody, right now I've got a couple citizen groups that want me to do basically mass release. They don't want me to have any more intake. They think the COVID is going to potentially kill people that are incarcerated in our jail. Again, I told you earlier, we haven't had one active case because of the good work that we've been doing. But then you're constantly dealing with that because people don't understand. And so even though the judges have done an absolutely incredible job to get us down to the number we're at, it's still not enough. And so as this kind of, we get into the new normal and the weather gets a little bit nicer, then we're going to start seeing more arrests. Everything's going to pick back up. Our numbers will start going north, and then it becomes an issue again, right? So it's going to continue to be a challenge until we do some brick and mortar stuff. But my job, trying to take care of, being as frugal as I can and fiscally responsible as I can, is to continue that great relationship with the court and try to keep the numbers down. Obviously, Dan Knight and I, the prosecutor, we've known each other since we were little kids. And so we have a good relationship as well. So we just continue to work collectively to keep the numbers down, because I don't want to have to come to the voters and say, hey, we need to pass this to build a bigger jail. But on the flip side, the community expects us to do public service, right? They want us to lock up bad guys. And so it's kind of a balancing act of bad guys need to be in jail, and those that don't, present a great public safety threat, we can then do some alternatives like house arrest, electronic monitoring, drug court, mental health court. There's a variety of different alternatives if the offender fits into the correct criteria. But if you're involved in gun violence, you're doing drive-by shootings or whatever, we're not letting you out. I mean, we're going to keep you in jail, right? So it's just kind of a balancing act of really looking at it globally. And that's what I tell people all the time. So many folks are so narrowly scoped on the issue that is important to them. But for me, I have to think globally. I mean, I would outstretch my hands to the side right now if I wasn't holding the phone. I've got to think very wide spectrum because I'm looking at stuff from a variety of different issues. But again, great staff in the jail. I've got great command staff back there, great detention officers. The relationship, with the court and the prosecutor is really what makes it all work, to be quite honest with you.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is kind of unique to Boone County, isn't it? I mean, so many good relationships that work, that are strong. They're rooted in good history. And you mentioned mental health court, drug court. I know that some of those are now in other counties and other venues, but this really makes Boone County a pretty unique place.
It is, and I talk about that all the time, Jody, how unique we are here, just because, I go to statewide training. And so I talk to other sheriffs, and the commission talks to other commissioners, and so on and so forth. And it is unique here because, Chief Jeff Jones, he and I go back a long way, back when he was doing undercover drug work, and then the city was working with the county. So that relationship is built, on 15 or 20 years of trust and working together. Same with Doug Schwant, the chief of the University Police Department. He was a captain at CPD when I was a captain at the Sheriff's Department. So we worked on a lot of stuff together. So those relationships just in the law enforcement part are so strong because you build that rapport over all the years. And, the city has tried bringing people in from outside agencies, other states, and it just hasn't really worked out well. And so it's a lot of us born and raised or have lived in Boone County for, 40 or 50 years that really makes it work. And then, Scott Olson, the fire chief, county fire, we've had a great relationship all these years. And so we're unique in that just because everybody gets along. When you got to check your ego at the door, everybody's willing to do that. For example, Jeff Jones has been speaking for all of law enforcement through all of the COVID stuff. You could have someone say, well, hey, the sheriff's the chief law enforcement agent in the county, he should be speaking. Well, it's more of the issues are prevalent in the city of Columbia than they are in the county. So Jeff's the one that needs to be speaking for the group. I'm perfectly okay with that. And so we communicate often. In fact, what you and I are doing now is Zoom meetings. Doug, Jeff, and I have done that. I communicate with Chief Terry Tolson down in Ashland, Bob Bias up in Centralia, Brian Schultz in Hallsville. I mean, it's a really unique and good thing that we have going on in this community.
Okay, and I think that's a great place to jump off the conversation, maybe because left it on a really good note. And it's a great conversation, Sheriff. I thank you for joining me, giving me a little bit of your time, and helping keep the public educated, even on the things maybe that most of us don't have a clue about, like operating and managing the jail.
Right.
Your words there are still very even-handed and gracious. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Jody. I appreciate it.
All righty.
All right.
Bye-bye.
See you, buddy.
See you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.